So my start with 2000 AD is probably when my mum bought me a 2000 AD when I was 7 years old. But my first professional work came about by going to, there was, I think 2000 AD ran its first official comic convention in London. I went over to that, and I'd already been doing some stuff in the small press for a small press fanzine called Class of '79, and I'd worked on that with a guy called Gordon Rennie, who was actually working for 2008 at the time. And so I went over to this comic convention, and I broke every rule that I tell other people to do when you go to a comic convention. I always say bring three or four pieces, one single continuous story. Don't bring too much stuff. An editor will be able to tell if you're any good based on that. But what I bought was like a portfolio. It was like 4 inches deep with everything that I had, and with the hope that I would look at it and go, "Yeah, you're actually getting better. You're not good enough, but you're getting better." But as it happened, he'd already seen my work online. On at that point there were news groups, and he'd seen some of my work in those news groups, and kind of had already made a decision to give me some work, which I just didn't know about because I did no one told me. So I sort of showed him that stuff, and then that kind of led to him saying, "Oh, I'll give you something." And then because Gordon had already been working for 2000 AD and had already he'd sent in a Judge Dredd script, and he basically said to the editor, who was Andy Diggle, "Why don't you give PJ that Dredd?" And that's how I ended up doing Dredd as my first thing. And I had a grin, I had like a rictus like grin for 3 days after being told, "Yeah, we'll give you some work," and it was kind of the one of the best days of my life. just being told you were going to get some work, not actually getting the work, just being told you were going to get some work. It was pretty damn awesome. I think when I was younger, I come from this very sort of British sensibility of enjoying anthology stories, and Dredd is sort of the ultimate anthology. It can be a horror story, it can be a piece of drama, it can be a comedy, it can be an action adventure, it can be all of these different things, and they're all contained within this single strip. And Dredd is kind of a constant in each of those stories. He's this sort of really cool, implacable face of justice. And when you're growing up in Belfast, there's you want a certain amount of justice. You want to see someone that implacable. I certainly did. I wanted to see. Just Dredd was just so cool. Everything about him was cool. He drove a cool bike. He had a cool outfit, and he was just unrelenting. And would the moments that stick in my mind with Dredd are those moments where Dredd is just beating all of the odds, and crawling his way through hell and going, I've got to do this because I am the law and I am Judge Dredd. Those are the moments that make your heart soar, But I also like all the goofy and the funny stuff. Those things sort of appeal to my sense of humour, and no other character, I think, can carry both of the weight of both of those things in one story, and nothing does it apart from Dredd, really. Like all the greatest comic characters, I think Dredd has a phenomenal silhouette. It's just so easy to do a good drawing of Dredd, because as long as you get that silhouette right, everything inside it, it's just, it's all just gravy. Then that silhouette is what carries all of it. And you can draw a simple Dredd with like one continuous unbroken line that would be as convincing as a Dredd that you could spend 5 hours drawing. He's just got such a great shape. It's such a great design. And now, to be fair, it's a design that has been refined by lots and lots of artists over time. So it didn't come out just exactly like that. And there were, the early Dredd looks different from how Dredd would be drawn now. But, the fact that shape of Dredd's physique and the costume has allowed so many different artists to have so many different interpretations of Dredd, and yet all of those interpretations look iconic, suggests that there's some magical alchemy going on with that costume. And it's a bit like Batman's silhouette is so strong. You can draw a silhouette of Batman, it's always Batman, and you kind of find that with some characters. They just have such a great silhouette. And I mean, the costume is insane. Like, there's no two ways about it. That costume is nutso. And I know, friends of mine who've never drawn Dredd come to draw Dredd for the first time. That's like, how do you do all of this? There's so much going on. But when you've got that silhouette right, once that silhouette shape is there, everything you're doing then is just filling that out, and as long as you've got that silhouette, then it's great. I mean, and it's also brilliant that Dredd as a character, you know, I mean, my favourite panel descriptions are often Dredd looks grim, because Dredd always looks grim. So it's how do you make Dredd look more grim? And then that's when you start hitting things like silhouettes and using the strength of that shape of his face and that chin, that remarkable chin that can hove into sight, and suddenly, you know, Dredd's just, you know, if you want to make a character look petrified about what's going to happen, if you want a reader to think, what's about to happen here? You draw one goofy looking character staring slightly up as a big giant chin looms over his horizon, you know, that on its own suddenly fills you with dread, you know. For me, it was never about the showier artists. There were always artists, I mean, guys like Mike McMahon, whose art is phenomenal, and Bolland, whose art is phenomenal, and all these guys that and Brendan McCarthy, phenomenal. But when I was that, you know, when I was 9, 10 or 11, whatever, it was Steve Dillon, and all those guys just looked weird and strange and a bit odd, and I don't quite get them. But Steve Dillon just nailed Dredd. Steve Dillon's Dredd was, you know, he was rock solid. He was a real person. You know, that was a character that could do and fight through anything. At best, I have my own Dredd now. I think my Dredd now is recognisably mine. But I mean, I'm really relying on the fact that Dredd himself carries so much weight because of what other people have done. You know, you know that silhouette works because of the shape of it, but it also works because people are bringing so much to it. I mean, there's 40 years of history people are bringing to that silhouette, and so when you're reading a comic with Dredd in it and it's a silhouette, and no matter who's drawn it, you see that shape and you feel that 40 years of weight and that iconic shape. It's sort of just you know, it's like Stonehenge or something. It's sort of, it doesn't need much because it's been there for so long. That's kind of the magic of it, I think.